You know what time it is! You know what time it is! E-S-E-L-E-S-E-L! And you know what underdogs is? It's a hungry dog!
And the second tick away, and the Eagles are alive!
We're alive to see again!
Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you! Let the celebration begin!
Well, it's Friday, and I guess we needed a full 4 days to go through the 5 stages of grief. You know, I was upset. I was angry. Have I moved on? I don't even know what all the 5 stages of grief are. I think I'm still in the anger phase, but here we are. Here we are.
I think there's denial. There's denial. There's I think anger and denial might be the only two that I have, actually.
You know, I almost feel like I was going through 4 stages of grief then, because there was a little part of me, the hopeful part, thought that we were going to eke out a win. But, you know, to use T.O.'s words from back in the day, if it looks like a rat and smells like a rat, it's probably a rat. And this is what the Eagles have been putting on film for the last 6 weeks. So going into this game,
your mom. Wasn't it your mom that said when somebody tells you who they are, you need to just believe them?
You need to listen. Yeah. Well, here we are. Welcome, everyone. This is episode 83 of the Wingin It podcast. I'm Ali. I'm joined by Andrew. Sadly, we don't have Alex today. This is the first time me and Andrew are actually going... Actually, no, you're right, because our draft episode, we had Colin, right?
Yeah, this is the first time that you and I are just getting to share the mics together. It's the first time that we are appearing as a duo. Feels good.
You know,
this is nice.
It's my first time, but I think I like it. As always, if you haven't already followed us, please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast. We're on TikTok at wingin.it.pod, and we're on Instagram at wingin.it.pod. And if you're listening to our beautiful voices and you want to check out our beautiful faces, come on over to our YouTube page and hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you don't miss more content. Drew.
Please.
Drew. What happened Monday night?
Oh, that's Is it a complicated answer? I don't really think so. You know, I'm simply the Eagles put up a performance that, to be honest, wasn't shocking, but I still found a way to be surprised by it. I predicted us to win. I got to give props to Alex because I think his score prediction was somewhere around 22 or 23-11, and the fact that the Eagles couldn't even reach 11. We scored 9 points against the worst pass defense in the NFL. And we let up 32 points to a team that put up 9 against the Carolina Panthers a week prior. And then the week before that, they choked against, I believe it was the Saints, where the Bucs had a chance to win the division the week before. The Bucs are not a good team. I think that we all kind of thought that they might be the worst team in the playoffs, and the Eagles actually got a pretty lucky draw, all things considered. And then, you know, the day before the Eagles game, we saw the Cowboys lose to the Packers, and I had a lot of thoughts about that. First of which is it actually made me feel better about being an Eagles fan because in my mind, I'm like, it's actually worse to be a Dallas fan, and that felt pretty good, to be honest. It definitely took a little bit of the weight off of the Eagles. And it also made me feel like I'm really thankful that we didn't have to face the Packers because Jordan Love looked legit. And, you know, you're looking at a Packers team that has, 4 rookies on their offense, 2 receivers, 2 tight ends, all who have been productive this year. And now let's look at the Eagles and this offense that's supposed to be high octane, this offense that I know we didn't have A.J. Brown and all things, you know, to be honest, Devontae Smith played his butt off. He was the one shining moment of that game without a doubt. But the offense looked exactly like what we have been seeing. And I don't know why. I don't know why I was naive to think that maybe we would see a little bit of creativity, a little bit of, it was predictable and it was bland, and we saw all the bubble screens, and we saw a run game that couldn't get going, and we saw a defense that let up plays through the air. And the defense, to be honest, kept us in the game, but there were multiple times that the Buccaneers had, Mike Evans had a ball right in his hands, dropped it. Cade Otton, their tight end, had a ball right in his hands, dropped it. And those were both
Cade who? Cade who? And that's like what upset me the most is like these.
You can say that about any tight end that we go against. It's like you don't know, these no-name tight ends a week before, but then they face the Eagles, and it's like, oh yeah, they can't cover anyone over the middle of the field, and they have no linebackers. So,
yeah,
Cade Otton.
Honestly, I felt the same way as you. Obviously, I want to get into the Cowboys game because I want to feel better about the Eagles. But at the same time, watching that game on Monday night, I remember at the end of the first quarter, I was like, oh my God, it's still the first quarter. Why isn't this game ending so that they could just like put me out of my misery? And honestly, I was surprised at how close the score was for a majority of the game. We were only down by like, I think in the third quarter, we were down by a touchdown.
To go into halftime 16-9, and on top of that, receiving the ball at halftime you could not have asked for more than that.
No. And the game was well within reach. It felt like one of the vintage games that we've had this season where we had no business winning that game. And for whatever reason, we somehow eked it out at the end of the year or at the end of the game, and obviously after the Bills game, Alex had his monologue of his wife sending him the text message about the Eagles aren't lucky, the Eagles are good. Honestly, I'm going to, now that the season is done, I'm going to say the Eagles were lucky on numerous times this year. And our luck finally ran out. And honestly, I can't wait for the 30 for 30 that's going to get done on the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles and just do a postmortem. What happened? How did this team that had so much expectation, Drew, I don't remember as an Eagles fan going into a season, with the exception of the 2005 season, the year after we lost the Super Bowl, and then McNabb ended up, I think he tore his ACL that year, right? So that was like a quarterback getting injured.
And there was all the TO drama.
And there was all the TO drama. I don't recall going into a season with this level of expectations and then having the letdown be so sort of like drawn out. This wasn't like, the Minnesota Vikings of last year where they like had the most single, score wins throughout the entire season. And then they just like lose to the New York Giants in the first round. This was long drawn out for 6 straight weeks. We all saw the wildcard game coming, and it was just like, I don't know, right? Like it was almost like we were getting killed by like this slow moving lava, and we just didn't want to move out of its way, right? Like
it's funny, my sister texted me after the most recent episode that we did, and she's like, you guys need to just do this, like a compilation of all of your Go Birds at the end of the episode and just listen to how they slowly deflate over time. And that's what the season was. It was this slow death. And they set us up for high expectations, obviously coming off a year where they go to the Super Bowl, and then you start a season 10-1. It's kind of impossible to turn back at that point. And especially the way that they got to 10-1, where, after that Bills game, and I think it was you that said that, the identity of this 2023 Eagles team is a team that finds a way to win, and how quickly it turned to a team that finds a way to lose. And that's why I think that the conversation of like, is it coaching? Is it the locker room? Is it the personnel? Is it players? What's going on? And, maybe we need to at least revisit that. I want to at least revisit that question with you and see, I guess, overall, ultimately, if you could like rank maybe, like your 3 reasons as to why this happened. I would love to hear, what your thoughts are.
A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned the Harry Truman quote, "The buck stops here," right? Like Nick Sirianni at the end of the day, regardless of what was in front of him, needs to have a majority of the blame. I won't say some of the blame, I'll say a majority of the blame. Because at any point this season, we didn't see any type of adjustment based on what was going on. We were getting had in the pass game. We had players like Sam Howell who were having career days against our defense. And what? Howie Roseman goes out and gets Kevin Byard. Howie Roseman goes out and signs Bradley Roby. All of these players, these quote unquote mercenaries that we're sort of like trying to plug all of these holes within our defense. Shaq Leonard. Shannon Sharp on Tuesday had like the best analogy for the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles defense. You're driving your car with the check engine light on. And you're like, you know what? I don't need to take this to the mechanic because the car is running just fine. And you keep running until finally the car breaks down. You take it to the mechanic shop and the mechanic is like, you drove your engine into the ground. There's nothing we can do for this. We've got to do a major overhaul. And I think that's what the 2023 defense is we were winning and everyone was saying, yay, we're winning. I don't like how we won here, but at least it's still a win. A win is a win is a win. And at the end of the day, for me, it is Nick Sirianni for failing to adjust based on his player issues. And granted, we had a lot of injuries on the back end. But the fact that he wasn't more vocal with Howie Roseman, who I'll put as the second person to blame in the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles campaign, because player personnel was an issue going into this season. I voiced this as a concern. I was like, you can't get rid of CJ Gardner-Johnson and expect that whoever is going to play at that same level, right? And I think like NFL teams are often guilty of this where they feel like players are just plug and play. You just put them into a system and the system is just going to work. No. And I think like Chip Kelly is the prime example of that, right? A system only works if you have the right players in it. And it is not a plug and play thing. We got rid of CJ Gardner-Johnson. We got rid of Kazir White. Who is the other linebacker that we got rid of?
TJ Edwards.
We got rid of him. And all of these players that were pivotal in how exceptional last year's defense was at generating turnovers. CJ Gardner-Johnson was out for like 3 or 4 weeks last year, and he was still leading the NFL in interceptions. Like that is how game-changing these players were. We got rid of them without any type of plan in how we were going to replace them. Even if you want to like take a look at it from like a Moneyball perspective, right? Billy Beane looking at his players, not as players who can like, do all of these things. It's like, who can get on first base? Like, let's look at it from the perspective of like, how do we generate interceptions? These players have the capability of generating X interceptions, whereas these players don't. And that's what we went into.
I think I have an answer for you. And I'll actually add Javon Hargrave to your list. He was one of 4 members of our defensive line last year that had 10 or more sacks. And I think what we saw, and I think what Howie Roseman's plan was, the mindset is we can avoid linebacker. We can have a below average pass coverage unit if our defensive front is that vicious where they can continue to get to the quarterback and make the quarterback get rid of the ball quickly. And I think what we saw, especially the second half of the season, is our defensive line slow down so much to the point where they weren't bringing that pressure. And therefore, it just made our defense so easy to pick apart. I really think that Howie has this, I think he just gets really a little horny for just a really, robust defensive front, just having these freak athletes that can get after the quarterback. And now it's like you have questions about Jordan Davis's conditioning and, Jalen Carter is a rookie and, how is their stamina, when they switch to the NFL. And, then on top of that, we see things like Hassan Reddick, staying back in coverage, which we saw last year. And then Nolan Smith, you really didn't get enough out of this year as a first-round draft pick. So it just seemed like the plan failed. The plan completely failed, and they were able to sneak by, the first 11 games of the year. And then once things took a turn, and to that point, you change defensive coordinators, it didn't really seem like the coordinator was as much as the issue, as much as it was like you don't have the personnel, you don't have the depth, you don't have a defense that's capable of keeping up with even crappy teams like the Giants and the Cardinals and Washington twice, So
Yeah,
that's
I'm remembering that Simpsons episode where I can't remember which character was talking to which character, but it's like, hey, I see that you've hit rock bottom. I think it was like Barney, and Barney is like, oh no, I could go way worse. And I feel like that was when Nick Sirianni demoted Sean Desai when we
agreed.
thought it couldn't get any worse, and he, elevates Matt Patricia as the play caller, and it got significantly worse, which is why I'm putting the majority of the blame on Nick Sirianni, because even when he tried to adjust, it made things worse. And, we could say like this belongs to the players, but honestly, I don't blame the players because the players were just trying to execute the system that was given to them, which is a pretty crappy system. We haven't even talked about offense yet.
Yeah, and now as you're talking, we've spent quite a bit of time talking about Brian Johnson this year. A lot of the times not having the nicest things to say because our offenses look so stagnant. But it feels like, at least from what I've heard this week, it really seemed like he had very little control over running an offense, to the point where it's like this guy's getting interviews from teams for head coaching positions, and it seems like a strong chance, actually almost I would probably say 100% chance that he's not here next year. Neither will either of the defensive coordinators, because if Sirianni stays, which it seems like is going to happen, the coordinators are going to just need to be completely revamped. And does Nick Sirianni have new people in mind to replace? That's going to be the question. And those were exactly the questions that we had very smartly going into this season, because we didn't have the skill that we had at these coordinator positions last year.
Yeah, Brian John, I'm going to say this, and for everyone listening, we're all amongst friends here. Given what he put on tape, I can't look at Brian Johnson's interviews as anything more than like a Rooney Rule candidate. Like they're just looking for minority coordinators to interview. And I'm saying this and it sounds insensitive, but the fact that the New York Giants did this a couple of years ago with Brian Flores when they hired Brian Daboll, they had already made a decision about hiring Brian Daboll before they had even interviewed Brian Flores. Like these teams are terrible, and they're required to interview black coaches. And I just don't see a team hiring Brian Johnson unless he like goes in there and shows clear evidence as to why he had this like impeccable system that Nick Sirianni just messed up. Nick Sirianni, by the way, we all forget that the Eagles were 2-5 in 2021 before he handed the play calling reins over to Shane Steichen. And be quiet, Siri. Still going.
Siri's like, yeah, we shouldn't have gotten rid of that guy, huh?
We shouldn't have gotten rid of. No, and I'm happy for Shane Steichen, but at the same time, this team, the phrase "he who much is given, much is expected," right? You've got a quarterback who is second in MVP running. He was number 2 or number 3 in the top 100 NFL players, ranked by all the NFL players that
Did
were
he actually finish that high? I don't think I ever actually caught that list. Wow.
I think he was like number 3 because it was Pat Mahomes number 1, Justin Jefferson number 2, and I think it was Jalen Hurts at number 3. You've got A.J. Brown, who is a game wrecker, who had 6 straight games of over 125 yards, beats Calvin Johnson's record. You've got Devontae Smith, who, small guy, but clearly explosive. When nothing else was working, he was the only one that was putting up damage against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We got DeAndre.
My man was getting dirty. Like, he was covered in grass stains and mud, and it's like, that guy is leaving it all out there on the field. He was the only consistent playmaker.
And then we've got DeAndre Swift, a man who had 4 carries at halftime. 4 carries at halftime.
Sounds about right.
Even though 2 of those carries came on the first drive, one of them was like a 9-yard carry. The other one was a 4-yard carry that got him a first down. It's malpractice.
It's malpractice. And I'm even going to go like a step before that. And like, again, we win a coin toss and we defer. And I think the day before we saw a very good example of why sometimes it can be a good idea to receive the opening kickoff, like the Packers did. You set the tone. You have an opportunity to move the ball, to put points up on the board and make the other team maybe change their game plan a little bit, change their mindset. But the Eagles, time after time, they kick the ball away so we can get it back at halftime. And I feel like it's because of that they just abandon the run altogether, because they're immediately playing catch up ball when they don't need to.
Yeah, and it's funny because we all saw this on the first game of the season against the Patriots, where Jalen Hurts it was very clear he was trying to not get hit. Obviously, there's speculation, and I know Troy Aikman was speculating at the end of Monday night's game about how injured is Jalen Hurts.
I have that same question.
Frankly, I think we all do. But even when he was injured last year, and Jalen tends to get pretty beat up as the season goes on, just because he's a running quarterback, and running quarterbacks can get a little dinged up, right? But from the beginning of the season, it was almost as if it looked like he is the face of the franchise. He is the franchise. They paid him all of this money, and they told him, do not take hits if you can help it. And when you do that to that type of quarterback, where I get it, right? Like, he wants to be a pocket passer, and he's improved his completion percentage pretty drastically. I think he was actually middle of the pack in completion percentage in the 2023 season.
Well, that's easy when you throw a bunch of bubble screens.
Yeah, I mean, let's.
And I need to add. Well, no, actually, finish your point, because I do have something that does bother me a little bit about Jalen, but I don't want to interject quite yet.
Well, I was just gonna finish by saying, I don't like how it seemed like we took half of his game and told him he can't do it anymore. That's what it looked like to me.
It looks that way, and I think that I want to believe that the reason that there was so much hesitance, whatever. The reason, I think that there's just a lingering knee injury. Like, that's the only, that actually gives me a little bit of optimism that he can recover, and then we can kind of just see him be able to take it to a different gear, because even when he did run, it didn't look like he had the same amount of explosiveness. I mean, there were times where he extended plays, but he was a step slower than he was last year. And then on top of that, I know this week he had the finger injury, and you could see that a little bit. Now, the issue that I was alluding to is that Jalen, if there's one thing that I can really knock on him, is that I can knock on him again. I don't know. My phrasing things weird.
We're winging it. We're winging it.
We're winging it, man. We're just trying to speak words in order. My other big knock on Jalen is that he just does not have the ability to zip a pass. His long ball has gotten much better, and that deep ball to Devontae Smith was a perfect throw. That was by far the Eagles' play of the game on the offensive side of the ball. But Jalen, and I noticed this on shorter passes, and it's well before the finger injury, he just doesn't throw the ball fast. Like, he just doesn't have a rocket arm. And I feel like it's really hurting them on the screen passes, because there's just like fractions of a second that you're losing, because it takes time for the ball to get to the receiver. And to be honest, he doesn't throw that screen pass the most accurate. There's quarterbacks that they can drop back. Like, I just kind of think of like an Aaron Rodgers, who like effortlessly can just sling a ball and, put it in a spot where the receiver's kind of catching it in a position where their momentum's already kind of taken them forward. Now, I know, like, throwing a bubble screen to Julio Jones or to Quez Watkins is probably never going to be the recipe for success, but he's just not good at throwing that ball. And that's really all I can say about that. So, to bring us back, I think the knee was something that's lingered all season long. And we saw it with Carson Wentz too. When Carson took a step back, it's like, how much, can we put on these injuries that have kind of piled up? And I have optimism that Jalen will recover and get healthy, and, hopefully come into next season just fresh, healed, and kind of just be willing to do what's ever needed to win a game, and not have to, like, I'm going to take it easy because I'm trying not to get hit. They just paid me all this money. It's like, we can't live like that. Josh Allen doesn't play like that. He throws his body out there on the line. So, there's things that Jalen can still improve on. I don't know if you can in your career just learn how to throw a ball faster. I don't know if that's just like a God-given talent, but it seems to hurt them when he kind of just lobs them. I don't know.
Yeah, again, I think this is why, I had my rant from a couple of weeks ago. That's on. It's only on audio. I didn't put a video out there just because I didn't have the heart to show how angry I was as I was speaking. But like the system itself, I feel like was designed to hurt him, right? Like it was designed to not give him any type of advantage. We don't motion, which gives him information. We don't run like running back designed runs out of anything other than the shotgun. Although I did see that we started running out of the pistol a little bit more. Those are actually the run plays that were working on Monday night.
And we have no plan against the blitz. Like that's,
and we have
that's,
no plan against
I think
the blitz.
that may be the biggest killer for him.
Yeah,
they've had no answer to it.
There's a YouTuber that I follow. I can't remember his name, but the YouTube channel is the QB School, and he did a couple of episodes on the Eagles where he basically just like does game film and like just, talking about like, opportunities that the quarterback could have taken advantage of, or like highlighting really good plays that the quarterback did. One of his last ones was the Eagles against the 49ers, and he was breaking down. He was like, I've been saying this all season. The Eagles blitz answer is like idiotic in my mind.
Non-existent.
Well, the thing is, he was saying that number one, usually what you do is you have your hot route from the direction of the blitz, right? So usually if you're getting a blitzer from your left side, whoever's on the left side understands that, hey, there's a blitz coming, and they cut that route short. They do some type of cross route, drag route, etc., to give the quarterback that out from the direction of the blitz, right? The Eagles actually have something very similar, although it is a longer developing route. It is away from the blitz. So you have Jalen Hurts running away, and he's trying to throw in the opposite direction. It just doesn't make sense from like a fundamental perspective. And this is why I keep going back to, this is obviously players. On offense, I don't think it was players. I think the reason why there were so much expectations this season is because we had all of the right pieces in play, and we weren't able to take advantage of it. This was a perfect example of why coaching can bring out more than what players are able to put on film. And at the same time, coaching is able to take away from what players can put on the field.
And it's a good point, because to be like Ali, literally the only injury that this offense really suffered this year that was a multi-week absence was Dallas Goedert. I can't think of any other offensive player that missed significant amount of time. Like, I can understand, we've looked at the Eagles numbers with and without Lane Johnson. So yeah, it's like if Lane's out for 5 to 6 weeks and they're struggling, you can kind of pinpoint the issue or maybe make some sense of it. But we've been pretty healthy for the most part on the offensive side of the ball. And even if like you have no defense, you like to think that with our offense, like with the players that we have on offense, you should at the very least be able to keep up with teams. And we weren't able to.
9 points, man. 9 points. Well, listen,
9 points, 32-9.
Speaking of a quarterback who can sling it. And honestly, this was a pretty big shocker to me. Who is the number 2 in touchdown passes quarterback this season?
The second you just started talking right there, my brain just went CJ Stroud.
Jordan Love. Jordan,
wow. What?
Mother effing Love. This guy, honestly, when you see quarterbacks like go through, and maybe like, listen, whatever you want to say about the Packers, that team can draft quarterbacks, man. Like, they can absolutely draft quarterbacks. And maybe the secret to having a long sustained franchise that is it puts you in the hunt, it puts you in position to win a championship every year, is you draft a quarterback before your starting quarterback is ready to retire or leave. You let him sit there on the bench, learn, progress, and then 3 years later you put him in. And he's not this like unseasoned rookie. He's this player who's been watching and developing in the corner this whole time. Jordan Love, I can't think of a quarterback who has increased his accuracy in throwing like in 6 games. Like,
and I
if
can't
you
think of a team that has done with quarterbacks what the Packers have done, to your point, because they had
Right.
Brett Favre forever, and then who was waiting in the curtails? Again, I don't know if that's the right saying. I'm just workshopping words and sentences, and let's just hope that they make sense. But who's hanging around waiting to take over? Aaron Rodgers. And then Aaron Rodgers has this long Hall of Fame career, and sure enough, who's sitting there on the bench for 3 years waiting for their opportunity, and now here they are. It's incredible. I can't think of any other teams that have done that.
No, considering that he's doing it with the tools that Aaron Rodgers had last year. The Packers didn't sign like these big name receivers. Like, they've got Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. I don't even know who their tight end is. And they've got Aaron Jones, obviously, who's just an absolute beast.
Their tight ends are both rookies. They have Luke Musgrave. I think Luke's his first name.
Musgrave. Yep, Musgrave.
Musgrave and Kraft. I think Tyler Kraft, or no, it's not Tyler Kraft.
That sounds right.
Because I don't know why I'm thinking of a guy that used to be on the Bengals or something, and he's not a rookie. But anyway, they have 2 rookie tight ends, and both, I think, between them and then their 2 rookie receivers, which was Dontavius Wicks and Sugar. Who's the other guy that I can't think of?
Bo Melton, Jaden Reed.
Jaden Reed. Between the 4 of those guys, I think all 4 of them had 30 or more receptions this year. I'm pretty sure it's the first time in NFL history that 4 rookies on the same team had 30 or more receptions. I mean, it's pretty impressive. And then how much did they end up putting up on Dallas? Dallas, who's supposed
48.
to be 48 points on Dallas, who's supposed to be this one of the best defenses in the league. Unbelievable.
I mean, talk about, like, to your point about Jalen being able to zip the ball. One of the things that impressed me the most about Jordan Love was how he was able to zip the ball into tight windows, into, like, in spots where he almost forces his players open. He almost like forces their momentum to take them into a position that's going to better suit them. And like that one play where he was getting blitzed and like throws off his back foot, and it's just this perfect like over the shoulder catch in the end zone. I was like, I'm a Jordan Love fan, man. Like, this guy can, I mean, obviously if you put 48 points on the Dallas Cowboys, which, by the way, the Green Bay Packers have won more playoff games in AT&T Stadium than the Dallas Cowboys have.
And just to make it all the more sweeter, it's like Mike McCarthy's former team that's just completely just like shoving it in his face. That's a heck of a stat. I didn't realize that, but it also doesn't surprise me because, the Cowboys feel like the freaking 76ers. Like, they just can't make it out of the first or second round of the playoffs.
Yeah. Did I feel bad? No. I thought it was pretty hilarious that Dak started off this season by saying that he wasn't going to throw 10 interceptions. And if you count the playoffs, he wasn't lying. He threw 11. So
that's still pretty good.
It's still pretty good. It's still pretty good. He had the most passing touchdowns this NFL season. I think Dak had, out of like all of the quarterbacks in the league, I think he had the biggest improvement, which is why I keep going back to this. Coaches can bring about the best in players. When you had Kellen Moore, who was calling the play calls, and Dak was he was Dak. And then Mike McCarthy fires Kellen Moore, takes over the play calling, and he's got, the best season of his career that he put on film. So, we can obviously like talk about this collapse, like till the cows come home, but the fact that it was on primetime, the fact that it was the playoffs, you had Dallas Cowboys, like that meme that was like, oh, season starts, this is our year, keep beating up on bad teams, we them boys, this is our team, and then choke in the playoffs. The fact that this has been the cycle, I honestly feel bad. I don't feel bad for Cowboys fans. Like, this, you chose this. This is on you.
I feel bad. Like, the only Cowboy fan I could ever potentially feel bad for is just like somebody who was like truly raised in or around Dallas, Texas, that has like a true reason to be a fan of the team other than because, someone in their family loved the Cowboys in the 70s because all of their games were broadcasted on TV. And so, America's team because all the games were broadcasted. It's like, now it's like we're past that, like there's you need to have some actual connection, or maybe you don't. I don't know. That's just my opinion, but it feels very just fraudulent to just hop on to America's team. Just like,
Yeah.
especially if you live in the Philadelphia area, you're just doing it to be a contrarian. You're doing it for attention, honestly. And like, if not this year for Dallas, then when? And that was my immediate thought. It's like, this is probably the most hope that Dallas has had since I can remember, since the 90s, because they really haven't had consistent quarterback play between Troy Aikman and Dak Prescott. You have CeeDee Lamb, who is arguably the best receiver in football this year. And, you still have you got Micah Parsons, who's one of the best defensive players in football. You have Bland, who took over for Trayvon Diggs and set a record with pick sixes. So like, they had all these great storylines going this year. There was all this excitement, and yeah, Dak was in the MVP running for the majority of the year, and for them to be one and done. And then on top of that, that set up the next game, which was the Rams and the Lions, where if the Rams won that game, it actually gave the Eagles a chance to host a home playoff game, which was just completely mind-blowing in the moment, but it felt very realistic. But then, of course, the Lions won and the Eagles didn't, so that was short-lived. But it kind of just like set up all these scenarios that were just like, the NFL is just so unpredictable.
Yeah, I have a hard time calling the Cowboys America's team. They're not even like Texas's team. Like, the Houston Texans are going farther than the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, that seems like the perfect opportunity to kind of just quickly review what happened last week and how that sets up this weekend's games. The first game of last week, which was those Houston Texans, CJ Stroud, rookie quarterback, DeMeco Ryans, first-year head coach, got to host the game. They won their division. So they hosted Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns, and they put on a clinic. They put on an absolute show. It's a hard team not to like. When you see young talent, when you see a team who was projected going into this year, they were projected again to be one of the top 3 worst teams in football, projecting to have one of the top draft picks. And, they got this great deal in return for Deshaun Jackson. They were able to draft CJ Stroud. They were able to draft, I think, Will Anderson as the defensive player. So they're set up, for quite a few years at this point. So they're going to be facing the Baltimore Ravens this weekend. The Ravens had the number 1 seed, so they were able to get the bye. So yeah, like, I guess I'll ask you simply your prediction on this game, and what, do the Texans actually have a chance to beat Baltimore in Baltimore? Right now, Houston's a 9.5-point underdog, over under set at 43.5. So yeah, man, what are your thoughts on this?
So one of the things that I love about Wildcard Weekend is you have like these really intriguing matchups that happen. And then whoever gets the short end of the stick by having to go play the number 1 seed the following week, we're quickly reminded why they're the number 1 seed, right? So Lamar Jackson is the clear-cut MVP this season. I think CJ Stroud has had one heck of a rookie season, and I hope it continues. Like, the guy is... I think he might be one of the all-time greats in quarterbacks in the NFL
he
for
looks
many
like
years
the
to
real
come.
deal. Yeah,
he does look like the real deal. But when I look at that Ravens team, man, like they've got a stout running game. Lamar Jackson is able to zip it. Zay Flowers. They got what's his name? Other receiver.
Odell Beckham.
Jr. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like the guy with the blonde hair.
Right.
And their defense is just like, this is the best defense that they've had in my memory since like the Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs era. And
it feels like their defense is never bad, but say that their defense is better than it's been is really saying something. And that's why they're the number 1 seed. Considering
like we talked last year about like the Goldilocks moment, right? Like where you've got the quarterback on the rookie contract, you've got like all these players, you've got this stout defense. And I think that there is another Goldilocks moment with NFL teams where you have a quarterback who is past his rookie contract, he's got his money. You've got rookie receivers who are exceptional at what they do. You've got a line that is able to hold, in pass blocking, and they're able to run block well. You've got a stout running game. And you've got a defense that's mostly made up of young players. And in my mind, like defenses, you've got a short window of 3 to 5 years to be able to capitalize on it, which is why I thought the New York Jets were going to do something this year, because they do have a defense. If Aaron Rodgers had stayed healthy this year, I think the Ravens are in their Goldilocks moment this year. And if it doesn't happen this year, it may happen next year. But if not in the next 2 years, I think this is their window.
I agree. And to that point, it does feel like there's probably a decent amount of pressure on Lamar Jackson because, yeah, you're basically the runaway MVP, and he's never won a Super Bowl. So I think that, kind of like another game we'll get into with Josh Allen, it feels like there's kind of like this day of reckoning coming for quite a few players where it's like, now's your chance. And that makes for great drama. It makes for a great storyline. And I just to give a prediction, I caught what you said before about how, a team has this wonderful shiny moment the week before, and then they're quickly reminded of, the tears of football teams. And I think Houston is kind of in for a rude awakening. Like I said, the Ravens are a 9.5 point favorite. I can see this like being a 3 possession win, like, in a sense, not to say last week was the Texans Super Bowl, but like you won a home playoff game in a year that you had no expectations. They can go into this game without a lot of pressure, knowing that, they're not expected to win and just kind of, let it fly. Who knows? Any given Sunday or Saturday, since the game's tomorrow. But it's really hard. The one other thing I wanted to add with the Ravens is, John Harbaugh's been there forever. He's a very good coach, a proven good coach. And I think that can also, make a bit of a difference going up against a rookie head coach.
Yeah, and I mean, John Harbaugh's been there. He's won a Super Bowl.
Yep.
So he knows what it takes. Then we've got the Packers and we've got the 49ers tomorrow night.
So that's smart. On Saturday, they gave both number 1 seeds, both the teams that didn't play last week. They're letting them play on Saturday. They're not giving them, even that extra day of rest to play on Sunday.
Well, I think they had to. I think they had to give them on Saturday because the Buccaneers and the Bills both played on Monday, and I think they have to give them that full week.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, also 9.5 point favorites. Like, what are your thoughts on this game?
There's something about a Packers 49ers matchup in the playoffs that just feels right. There's something nostalgic about this matchup. I think I probably think back to maybe around 1996, when T.O. was on the 49ers, Steve Young against Brett Favre. And I remember T.O. catching a touchdown at the end of the game. And I remember, I think I was 8. And I remember afterwards T.O. taking his helmet off and it looked like he was crying. And I remember asking my parents, I'm like, oh, did he get hurt? Is he hurt? Is that why he's crying? And then I think I shortly realized that it's just it was such a huge moment, such a huge play that, it was probably just an emotional type of thing. So anyway, weird memory. It's interesting to see both of these number 1 seeds. They're both 9.5 point favorites. I give the Packers a much better chance of winning this game than I do the Texans beating the Ravens. Overall, I don't think the Packers will win. I still think that the 49ers, just on both sides of the ball, they have so much talent. They really do. Like having Brandon Ayuk and having Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. They are a hard team to beat. And I don't want to see the Niners win, but it's going to be tough for the Packers to come off of that high from last week and be able to do it in San Francisco. If you can beat Dallas and San Francisco back-to-back weeks in their own stadium, I will buy a Jordan Love jersey. I'll do it because I will be beyond impressed.
So I have what I called my Cowboys hater uniform. I have a Packers jersey. And a Packers hat, and I was wearing it on Sunday last week.
Wait, who's your Packers jersey? Dorsey Levens? Antonio Freeman?
No, it's I stay true. I try to stay true to the rule, the number 1 rule. I don't wear another man's name on my back, so it's my name.
So you did or did not get a DeAndre Swift jersey this year?
I did get a DeAndre Swift jersey because I told Alex that I was going to do it. A China green DeAndre Swift jersey. And, it's unfortunate because
it's an exception.
Yeah. This game, it's really intriguing, and I think I need to pick with my heart here because I saw a Packers team last week who is a 7-point underdog going into Dallas, and they were playing loose. Now, granted, the Cowboys have like this thing that's looming over their heads of like, we can't make it to the big game. Like, heck, we can't even make it to the NFC Championship game. So that was kind of looming over their heads. But what I saw was a Packers team who is playing incredibly loose. They literally have zero expectations. And what they did last week against the Cowboys makes me feel like there is an opportunity here. I will say the thing that, kind of worries me a little bit about this game, because I don't want the 49ers to win, is Kyle Shanahan is just an absolute like genius of an offensive mind. And, I think about the Green Bay Packers, their number one weakness is on their defense. So it is truly about, if we can turn Brock Purdy into the pumpkin that we all know that he is. Cam Newton called him a game manager along with Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott. He called Jared Goff as well. I was
going to say, you just turn him into Dak Prescott, because I think they had 3 or 4 interceptions. So they basically turned Dak into a pumpkin,
Exactly. I think if we can, I'm a huge fan of Jair Alexander. I love his trash talking. Like the fact that he went on that interview right after the game. He was like, there's only a few quarterbacks that have thrown me multiple interceptions, and Dak is now one of them. Like, ultimate troll
speaking
moment.
The truth.
Just speaking the truth. I'm gonna pick the Green Bay Packers for this one.
Why
I think
not?
they're a young team with nothing to prove, and I think they're gonna go in loose enough to where this game is going to be at least close, and I really hope they pull it out.
It's going to be a fun one. That game is the primetime game tomorrow night, which is Saturday, 8:20 kickoff. Let's take things into Sunday and finish off this slate. We got the Buccaneers. Who did they beat last week? Some scrub
team.
I've eliminated it from my memory forever. The
Just
Buccaneers
like
will be Yeah, you're not kidding. The Bucs are going to be traveling to Detroit, where that was a spectacle last week. That was a really cool thing to watch. It's been 30 years since Detroit hosted a playoff game. They hosted the Rams, Matt Stafford, former quarterback of the Lions for a long time. Unfortunately, didn't have a whole lot of success there, but did kind of help with working towards turning around that franchise. That place, I'm sure, is going to be probably even louder than it was last week. So the Lions are currently a 6-point favorite against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm a little surprised it's only one possession. The over-under is 49.5, so it does seem like there will be some points. Detroit is not a good team against the pass. They have given up multiple weeks of just absolute huge performances to other receivers. Granted, some of those receivers have been superstars like Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb, but they have trouble. Puka Nacua had an incredible game last week. So, Baker Mayfield, is he going to be able to? Is there more magic for Tampa Bay? Are they going to be able to win this game and take care of them like they did to us, or do you see Detroit being the victor?
I think this is probably the most clear cut, second to the Ravens Texans. I don't think the Buccaneers belong in the playoffs. The fact that they beat the Eagles in the first round, we were talking about the Eagles having like the best draw of playing the Bucs in the first round. I think the Buccaneers looked at the Eagles and they were like, "Oh my God, we got the Eagles. Like, this is an easy win for us." If we had to go to Detroit this week and play Detroit, I would have said there's no way we're beating Detroit. Just like I'm saying, I don't think there's any way that Baker is going to be able to beat Jared Goff.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah, I mean, at the very least, Detroit's defense can't be much worse than the Eagles. And I would probably say that their offense is better than the Eagles at this given point in time. Amon St. Brown, Amon
Amon-Ra.
Amon-Ra. I knew, dude. It's been a rough week. All right, there's been a
It
lot of
has been.
recovery going on from.
Yeah.
So Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sun God.
Sun God, because we've been in the dark. We've been in the dark the whole week.
He's awesome. Sam Laporta, fortunately didn't have to miss any time with the knee injury. They have that two-headed monster of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, which is probably the best two-headed running back monster in the NFL at this point in time. And, again, they have the home field advantage. So it's really hard for me to see the Bucs winning. Like, major props to Baker Mayfield for what that team's been able to accomplish this year. But their defense is still not great. I think Detroit will not have trouble moving the ball, putting up points. And, it's Tampa Bay, like you said, they're the worst team in the playoffs. So there's really no reason that they should be able to beat Detroit this week. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think Baker's had his moment last week, and that's it.
Man, I really am impressed with Baker because he had a good game and his game really could have been so much better. Like those drops, seriously, they were giving the Eagles every opportunity. Here I go. I'm revisiting a game that I told myself I would eliminate from my mind, and I'm getting sucked right back in. But all things considered, he was throwing the ball accurately, and his players were letting him down, and they still ran away with the game. So anyway,
he was also playing the worst pass defense in the NFL. Actually, he was also playing the worst defense in the NFL. Which takes us. It's like, man, how can there not be script writers in the NFL? We get Kansas City at the Buffalo Bills Sunday afternoon at 6:31 Eastern, 5:31 Central. I'm going to say that because when Alex listens to this episode,
evening,
I want Alex to know that I mentioned the Central Time because he's such a hater for Central Time. We've got Patrick Mahomes playing his first ever playoff game away from Arrowhead Stadium. What are your thoughts on this game?
My thoughts on this game is this is the Bills' Super Bowl. They have to win this game. There's no two ways about it. Josh Allen has to win this game. I want the Bills to win. I'm picturing the Bills not winning, and just how would that fan base ever recover from that? Especially after the overtime that was 2 years ago. Where the Bills were never able to get a chance to have the ball in overtime, and they've since changed the rule. But man, it's the Bills are a 2.5 point favorite. This is basically an even game, and we almost have Patrick Mahomes on Dak Prescott levels in terms of how annoyed we are by this guy. So I think we all want to see Patrick Mahomes fail, and especially after the last time they played the Bills, where that final play got called back, and when he went to shake Josh Allen's hand at the end of the game, and all he did was complain about the call. I really hope that there's some karma here, or that, I don't know, man. All I can say is the Bills have to win this game. I can't be any more, definitive. The Bills have to win this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think Josh Allen, this is his career right here, is losing to Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, and he needs
to finally have him
at
home. You finally have him in your own house.
He needs to get this monkey off his back if he's ever going to be elevated to a tier where we talk about him and they do, right? Like Chris Collinsworth obviously is like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, everyone is going to be you know what I'm talking about, right? I can't say on this podcast because, this is a family friendly podcast.
Tony Romo does the same thing. It's just a little bit of
there it is, Jim.
Oh my God. So good.
I really want the Bills to win. I think the Bills are going to win. And I think this is going to be the early fall, if you will, of Patrick Mahomes, where he's been looked at as kind of the second coming of Tom Brady. And I think starting from this season, it is going to be pretty evident that Tom Brady resides in a galaxy all on his own, and no one's ever going to be able to visit him.
My only pushback there is that Patrick Mahomes' receivers have really let him down this year. And, you know, on the flip side of that, Tom Brady, other than Randy Moss, he really never had stud receivers. So, these Deion Branch guys, David Patton, just like, then he had the Wes Welker and Julian Edelman and some of these, the little white guys that were able to make things happen. But he never had star receivers. And really, Patrick Mahomes hasn't really either, but his receivers have definitely let him down quite a bit this year. So it's hard for me to put their, step back this year solely on the quarterback, because there's been shortcomings by other members of the team that haven't been Pat's fault. But yeah, it's tough to argue. Like he really, Patrick Mahomes is still he's going to be close to that Brady level. I don't know, man. We'll see. He's still got quite a few years left.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that wraps up this weekend. I think that we're in for a nice slate of games. I really can't wait for the Green Bay San Fran game. I think you're absolutely right. It just feels right to watch a game like that in the divisional round of the playoffs. Any last thoughts before we send it home?
I don't know. Obviously this Eagles season was highly, highly, highly disappointing. It was fun for a very short while, or maybe for a couple months, and things definitely took a nasty turn. I'm really curious to see what this offseason holds, and we will definitely be continuing to record and kind of report things as we see them, and talk amongst ourselves to see what we think. There's still, I suppose, is a chance that Sirianni isn't here, like we've kind of already talked about. Most likely he will be, but I am curious to kind of hear just continued reports, see if there's just any more information about what happened with this team. And, also got to give a quick thank you to Jason Kelce, if that is indeed the last game that we'll ever see, Kelce play for the Eagles. It's a really anticlimactic way to finish, but, anybody who's been watching Eagles football for the last decade, I think has nothing but love for that guy. So it's been a complete joy getting to watch him and even just listen to him speak. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited about this weekend's game. It'll be a nice way to kind of reset and not think about the Eagles. And then hopefully things fall into place a little bit and we can get back on track next year. But it still sucks, man. It really does.
Well said. Well said, Drew. Yeah. Well said. Well, thanks for winging it with us, everyone. We're going to be back next week to recap the progress in the divisional rounds and look forward to the NFC Championship game. And Drew, this one is specifically for your sister. Go Birds!
Oh, Birds.